Hey Lake Point, Pastor Mike here to get you caught up on the third week of our series, Dollars and Cents, a series where we're looking at what the Bible really communicates about money. In this series, we have been using the parable of the three servants to help us appreciate what stewardship looks like in the kingdom of God. And what we've learned so far is that stewardship is about wisdom, not wealth. It's about handling money in a way that reflects the wisdom of our King. As stewards, our job is to invest wisely, to take the time, the talents, and the treasures we have received and multiply and grow them so that God can use us to advance His kingdom here on earth. It's why stewardship is all-encompassing. It's more than just managing your money, while it's about living your life on mission. As Nate likes to say, this life is training for future reigning. You see, stewardship is a road that leads us to a life of blessing and kingdom impact. On a really practical level, that means we need to do four things well: earn integrally, spend wisely, save diligently, and as Nate focused on this week, give generously. He did so by looking at two more parables Jesus told. The first is the parable of the Good Samaritan. As Jesus tells it, and Luke records it, a Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, they beat him up, and they left him half dead beside the road. Now, we know little about this man. All we know is that he was headed from Jerusalem to Jericho. Jerusalem is up on a mountain 2,000 feet above sea level. Jericho is down in the desert 800 feet below sea level. In other words, this was a 25-kilometer trek through rough terrain from Jerusalem to Jericho. Back in ancient times, it was considered one of the most dangerous roads in all of the Near East because of all the bends and turns in the road. Bandits would hide in the many crevices and caves and ambush their next victim, which is exactly what happens to this man walking down this narrow dirt road. He was robbed and beaten and left naked, bleeding and unconscious. Jesus continues the story by saying, by chance, a priest came along, but when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. What's important to note is that a priest in that society was part of the upper class. They lived a life of luxury compared to ordinary men. Scholars believe the majority of priests lived in the city of Jericho and would work 2 weeks on and then 2 weeks off. And so most likely what was happening was that this priest was traveling home, and because he was upper class, he was most likely riding on a horse. He would have just finished 2 weeks of service in the temple, sacrificing animals and helping people atone for their sins, and now he's on his way home. And we read that how when the priest saw this man in need, he decided to do nothing, just pass him by. Jesus continues the parable. A temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there, but he also passed by on the other side. Just like the priest, the temple assistant would work 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off. And so no doubt this man is also headed home like the priest who's in front of him. In fact, the priest in front of him is most likely his boss, because unlike his boss who would have ridden on a horse, he wasn't upper class, and so he would have been walking further behind. This temple assistant is now faced with the choice. What will he do? Will he care for this man, or will he walk by him like his boss did? He too chooses to do nothing and passes on by. Now, these men would have been respected by the audience that Jesus is telling the story to. However, this would not be the case for the next character Jesus introduces them to. To their shock and horror, Jesus says, then a Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Now, the people gathered listening to the story would have instantly turned up their noses and scoffed at the mere mention of a Samaritan because they hated Samaritans. They couldn't stand these people. These people in their minds were considered half-breeds of sorts. But listen to what Jesus said, what this despised Samaritan does. He says, going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn where he took care of him. The next day he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm here. Jesus finishes the story by asking the religious law, the expert, the law of Moses, this question. Now, which of these men would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by the bandits? The man replied, the one who showed him mercy. Now, just so you know, this parable would have offended everyone in the room listening to it, because no first century Jew would expect a despised Samaritan to help a wounded Jew. They hated each other. But this despised foreigner becomes the hero in the parable because he understands something about the kingdom of God that these religious Jews do not. It's called God's economy. The word economy simply means a financial system, and God's economy is completely different than any financial system we have in this world. In the parable of the Good Samaritan, we see people operating from three different economies. These three different economies reflect the condition of our hearts. Now, the first character we are introduced to in the parable are the bandits. And the bandits who robbed the man in the story were operating from the devil's economy, which is all about taking. Its mode of operation is cheating and stealing. Its motivation is fear working itself through greed. And its motto is, what's yours is mine, and I'm going to take it. Next in the story, we're introduced to the priest and to the temple assistant. And they were operating off of the world's economy, which is all about trading. Its mode of operation is buying and selling. Its motivation is fear working itself through need. And its motto is, what's mine is mine, and I'm going to keep it. It's why both of these men choose to step over and step by the unconscious stranger. Do they feel sorry for the man? Sure. But they don't feel they are in a position where they can respond because they believe this lie that if I give, I'll have to go without. So I need to protect what I have and let someone else respond. However, nature had a better way than that. It's counterintuitive, which is not surprising because most things in the kingdom of God are counterintuitive to the way the devil's economy works or the world's economy operate. See, Jesus used the parable of the Good Samaritan to give us a brand new perspective on managing money, and it's all about God's economy, which is based on trusting. Its mode of operation is giving and receiving. Its motivation is faith, not fear, working itself through love. And its motto is, what's mine is God's, and I'm going to give it. As you can tell, it's the complete opposite of the devil's economy. In the devil's economy, we use and abuse people because we love money. In God's economy, we steward money because we love people. We see this illustrated powerfully through the parable of the prodigal son. I mean, think of the three main characters in that story. The younger son was operating from the devil's economy. He went to his father and said, I want my inheritance and I want it now. In that culture, it was the equivalent of saying, Dad, I wish you were dead. Such a request in the ancient Near East in this honor and shame culture would have resulted in the father slapping the son across the face and throwing him out of the house, but that's not what the father does. To everyone's amazement, the father divides his estate and gives half of it to his son. To do so would not have been as easy as going to the bank and withdrawing some money. The father's wealth would have been primarily wrapped up in real estate, and so he would have had to sell off some of his land to do so. And this has been a really big deal because back then a person's identity was tied to their land. To lose part of your land was to lose part of yourself and your family identity and your standing in the community. And so in doing so, the father demonstrated that he is operating out of God's economy. He's like, you're my son, I love you, in faith, I'm gonna bless you, and trust God will work it out. Then there's the older brother in the story. Which economy is he living out of? The world's economy. Think back to what he says, I worked hard for you, you should give to me because of how hard I've worked for you. Not because he's related to him, not because he has been a loving father. No, it's fear working itself through need. I do this for you, you do this for me. And so what we have here is the same family with three different mindsets, three different attitudes or economies surrounding money. The ultimate question we all need to answer in light of that is, which economy are we living out of? Well, friends, thanks for listening. Enjoy jumping to discussion questions. I'll see you next time.